Ioseb died in 1979 when I was 7 at age 98. He was sent a copy of my birth certificate in the mail in 1972 by people who had his daughter, my mother, under constant casual surveillance for him. He already knew the 4 females registered to my father at birth before I was born, without my father Kevin's consent for adopting them, were each not a legitimate child of Ioseb's youngest daughter. I was though. My mother Judith died in 2018 and Russia got a copy of her death certificate. She owned basically nothing and was divorced by my father Kevin in the late 1970s. They got a random female who was not part Hohenzollern or Romanov out organized crime slapstick vaudeville Aussie style around 2/3 my mother's age when my father died in 2004, pretended she was my mother, and my father Kevin left her everything as if they were still married and she was still Mrs. Webb. Despite him not being legally allowed to leave her anything other than $10,000 cash due to the divorce settlement in the 1970s. That is the thing about divorce settlements, they are final if the couple never remarries and recognized by churches for the purposes of financial settlements. If a man's divorce settlement says $10,000 and nothing else can be left the ex-wife in the will, he is breaking the law by attempting to leave more than that to her in a newly registered will document. He can be questioned by law enforcement if a will is registered with more than that mentioned. And then charged with offenses like contempt of court, even fraud. There is a whole industry out there of people faking remarriages to invalidate final legal divorce settlements, even though they tend to pretend it's a new marriage and only applies to post-remarriage assets. Though while reading imposter mommy sat there in front of the neo-Nazi etc. fake older sisters, trying not to let on there were hidden cameras and microphones. The fake mommy show eventually illegally sold my house to someone conceived with Einstein sperm. He was in a sexual relationship that made him cringe, like Sideshow Bob off The Simpsons after having sex with Selma, with the oldest fake sister. The oldest fake sister was the grandchild of neo-Nazi Ricky O'Shea. O'Shea was tried at the Nuremberg trials for pretending to be homegoing, a Webb, whilst torturing homosexuals in Dachau prison between December 1943 and the end of World War II. Including torturing my great-grandfather Prince Sebastian Habsburg, my father Kevin's grandfather. O'Shea was a life without parole prisoner in Dachau prison in Germany before the neo-Nazis took the prison and he escaped in December 1943. They then had a chat with him because they had already looked at his prison mugshots. They had already decided, before they facilitated his escape, he looked close enough to pretend to be homegoing if made over by an award-winning film production crew with makeup and costumes. Who won Golden Globes before World War II. Convincing. Neo-Nazi O'Shea's granddaughter, pretending to be my older sister when I was born, had already spent, with the other fake sisters, hundreds of thousands of dollars my father Kevin left me in his estate, stolen whilst he was terminally ill and in palliative care. They allegedly faked her death afterwards so they could pretend I couldn't get the cash recovered from me afterwards. Wrong again. I tried to explain why people who were involved in stealing assets my father Kevin left me off me before and after he died seemed to be in more moral trouble than they bargained for. Including violent slack-brained morons who pretended they helped them steal it because I naturally lost my virginity with another homosexual man instead of trying to force myself into a woman first time after watching the History Channel. Trying to steal assets off me for the spawn of lunatic Einstein sperm and their neo-Nazi descended sexual partners always extrapolates out to trying to raise money for them to torture, maim, and disfigure. And always extrapolates out to trying to raise money for them to commit mass genocides they have future plans for. Not semi-quasi-innocent thuggery of a person who just lost their lovely father to a terminal illness. The bigger the money number involved that someone is attempting to steal for them or with them, the larger number of people they budget to intend to kill in mass genocide. Into millions of victims if the cash figure involved is big enough. And the shorter the time frame they intend to do it in. Then they get slack-brained theatrical. They start planning appetizer genocides of small numbers of millions to entertain on 24-hour news services like CNN. Planned for immediately after the money is accessed, like within a month or two. Followed by tens of millions during the aftermath. Always with breaking the previous record in less than a calendar year in mind. If a similar number to previous genocides, record short time then. The number in Germany in 1944 was around tens of millions. 10 million and 1 is tens of millions. The bigger the number in cash, the bigger the genocide with entrees and zag. All totally seriously planned, even if impossibly stupid to attempt to commit in reality. All based on what was used to mass murder millions of victims in Germany between December 1943 and mid-1945. And how much those substances and venues would cost now. There are always almost vegetative-like state shut-ins doing the planning, though. Not a total panic actual genius at work thing by any means. Good news and bad news isn't an Einstein vomit equation thing. The media publicized head of the terrorism group responsible for the 9/11 attack on North America in 2001 was conceived with Albert Einstein sperm. She was Charles Manson's half-sister. What they planned was a lot worse than what happened. I am not a happy-goodness camper about being targeted like this at all. In a big, non-theatrical way. The other thing to factor in is human equivalent species in the nearby region of the galaxy. They watch our planet with heat-sensitive telescope imaging. The data for the images takes as many light years as they are away to get there, so they can collate it and display the images. If they are 12 light years away, they get the heat-sensitive image of our planet 12 years after it happened on Earth. If a large explosion happens on Earth, they see heat-sensitive telescope images and film of it 12 years later. From large explosions in fireworks accidents, maybe even just fireworks, to nuclear tests that pretend favor it. The evils amongst them are constantly telepathically trying to talk humans into large devastating heat-emitting events, including that could result in the death of everyone. If someone tries a terrorism attack, they say okay, we'll keep an eye for that when the data arrives in 12 years' time, and let you know we saw it. It results in staring zombie-like things on Earth, waiting to hear if the extrasolar species saw the explosion on their telescope images for 12 years. Some of them claim to be ready if something causes human extinction in a very short time frame. They think they would see the last few million humans die off over a few weeks if it came to that on heat-sensitive imaging, based on body heat alone. They would stop telepathically hearing us humans 12 years earlier though. Just see the replay. I am completely sure species elsewhere in the galaxy watch replays of World War I and World War II, collected via heat-sensitive telescope film. Like amateur historians feeling their way through without any actual photos or footage to go by. Incessantly. Standing in front of a sports scoreboard-like screen with a heat-sensitive imaging replay of 1945 and a pointing stick, having a chat to the participants like a weather presenter about it. Theories, etc. The species that fired the big doomsday one they were sure would result in human extinction at Earth, that missed and hit Jupiter in 1993, are those lunatics go to telepathy chat. 27+ years delay between hot terrorism events on Earth and them seeing the images. People sit and stare, waiting to be told if that species got a snapshot of their terrorism attack on Earth for 27+ years. Still waiting.